TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Farm Stallion Brody's Cause, the multiple Grade 1 winning son of Giants Causeway. Look for his first foals in 2018.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have two races to talk about this weekend, but let's recap two races from last weekend first, and let's start off with the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Now, we've done this show a long time together. I know for a fact that the winner of this race is not going to make it on the TCI top 10, but he did earn 20 points towards his quest to get into the Derby. Tell me, what did you think of the winner in this race?
Well, the winner was coming from, poly-track type form in California. So I'm not surprised that Doug O'Neill's horse gets up on the inside and wins this race, John. The reason, we alluded to it last week, the reason it's so hard to make, anything, you see him here diving up the inside here with the green silks on. The reason it's very difficult to make anything out of this race is you see a lot of horses finishing up here, so really there's no separation. But honestly, if Doug O'Neill's horse wins by 20 and you look at his form and you realize that this was a synthetic prep, there's no hard spun here to where you say, okay, there's a supreme dirt talent. And even Animal Kingdom, when he won this race, John, nice horse, but he had a turf pedigree and won on the poly track. So that's why he's 20-1 in the Derby. It's hard to give him credit because he had no prior dirt form.
Right.
Same thing with Blended Citizen. So again, we're trying to figure out the Derby picture, which is running 1.25 miles on dirt. This was synthetic prep. For me, Blended Citizen's a horse that would have to come back and run well on the dirt. And if they train him straight up to the Derby, I don't know if he's going to have the points to get in. He's going to be a long shot just on the fact that he has no dirt form and he's a major question mark on that surface.
Well, let's talk about a horse who has shown some serious talent on the dirt, and of course that's our Rebel winner. This is a horse that was on the fringe of getting into the TCI top 10. Let's watch the stretch of the Rebel. You take me through it, and then we'll talk about the top 10.
Extremely impressed with your winner here. Handy the whole way around there. Good stalking trip, and you see him take off here with Luis Saez. John in the post parade. He stole the show in my opinion. Big, scopy, beautiful son of Malibu Moon having a bridal song mare. You see him really reaching and separating here for some good colts. Combatant's been a really nice horse in form on that circuit. Solamini, we know what he is.
Yeah.
And probably should be a Grade 1 winner, got taken down. Obviously was on the board in the Breeders' Cup, got taken down in the Low South Futurity. So an up-and-coming, talented son of Malibu Moon here. Let me say this about him. I've been very impressed since his debut in terms of the fact that he won sprinting at Gulfstream, coming from off the pace. Hard to do first time out. They put him on the road in a Tampa two-turn try, and it was a short field, but the way he won rather easily there in hand over Vouch and some horses that can run a little bit. Impressed that he was able to go on the road in the Tampa surface and win first test around 2 turns. Coming here on the plain against this type of group with the seasoning of Solamini, some of these horses sporting chance like that, to be able to have the trip that he had and draw away just shows you what kind of talent he is. He is a supreme talent, John, a beautiful colt with a monster upside. He's a bit immature, so the fact that he's doing this as immature as he is, he's taken all those steps that he's taken successfully. You have to give him credit. You watch him in the post parade in his maiden race, you watch him in the post parade here. Big, beautiful colt, John, but he's all over the pony, he's prancing. You can tell he just hasn't quite put it all together yet. The fact that he's able to go 3 for 3 in those scenarios I outlined and do it so impressively to win the Rebel, John, with a big buyer, big speed figure in here. Going forward, I think he's going to be one of your favorites now in the Arkansas Derby for the Leblongs, who are Arkansas natives. That Arkansas Derby is going to be a very interesting race between this horse and whoever Bob Baffert brings, whether that's McKenzie, probably brings Solamini back. That could be your best prep, in my opinion, in terms of final prep to watch out for.
I hear you saying the word talent, and that seems to be the trend. We're seeing it more and more each year, but this year is no different. You got horses like Justify, you got horses like Magnum Moon here. It's interesting, you're seeing a lot of firsts in the sports world. There's been a lot of streaks, a lot of things that are happening that are firsts. Yeah. This might be the year where that streak is over as far as not having any 2-year-old form and then winning the Kentucky Derby. We got a lot of serious horses that appear to be very talented 3-year-olds who got a real shot in the Derby.
Absolutely. Magnum Moon, he has Todd Pletcher conditioning him. He's got one of the best getting him there, and the fact that he's knocked down every challenge in front of him, Like I said, from the Gulfstream debut, went sprinting to on the road to Tampa as a quirky surface to win in hand there, to now come to the Rebel, major step up, and to win as authoritatively. I mean, I see some signs of immaturity there, John.
Yeah.
I think that really that's the main. I'm not worried about foundation for this colt in terms of physical foundation. 1.25 miles in May, he'll be ready to roll, particularly with a 1 1/8 prep next month. The question for him is mentally, I think, for him not to come around until January. I mean, he has no 2-year-old foundation or form from a mental standpoint, but the fact that he's handled everything, I think he's only mentally going to get better. I mean, some of the antics I see, again, with racing experience, with age, he's only going to get better, more seasoned. I think that's going to show up in his performance. So I'm very excited about Magnum Moon, and for me, he's a major player now.
Well, I mean, there was a horse in there that we've both really had high hopes on. It was disappointing at Sporting Chance. Let's take a look at the TCI top 10 now. You tell me where Magnum Moon lands and tell me a little bit about Sporting Chance.
I'll say this about Sporting Chance. Very disappointed in the ride. Johnny V broke and sort of wanted to see where he'd wind up going into the first turn, and he wound up getting hung out wide there. I think he was a little surprised about the horses that showed speed to his inside. He was wide on both turns, had a very wide trip trying to track a stalking Magnum Moon. Now, having said that, I wanted to see more finish. And the stark reality is with Sporting Chances, you wonder if him being fast-tracked into this 3-year-old campaign, it takes the right horse, John. I mean, they rushed him into the Southwest Stakes. He had trouble that day. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially with the peanut buttery as that track was and him getting a significant bump. But to come back and work a mile and then work a bullet half-mile coming into the Rebel, you were either going to see him move forward or you're going to see him maybe say, I'm not quite ready for this yet. And I think you really saw the latter there. Despite a tough trip. Now, look, if he came back and ran well in the Arkansas Derby with a better trip, more forward trip, because I think he really wants to stalk or maybe be on the lead at heart. I think his speed is a weapon. Then maybe he can enter the picture again. But right now, I can't have him on the top 10 because it just feels like he's not up to that challenge yet in terms of being rushed onto this Triple Crown trail.
Well, I see, you said Magnum Moon was kind of on the fringe. Looks like you put him on a TCI in a big way. He's moved all the way up to number 6. He's ahead of some really nice horses in there. Tell me, what was your thoughts on moving him all the way to 6?
Well, I wasn't ready to move him into the top 5 yet. Let's look at our top 5 before you can, mention 6 and sort of the logic here. I mean, we have Bolt number 1. I told you McKenzie's probably going to move up. Yep. I just needed to see Sporting Chance out of fairness, see him run. McKenzie, I think, deserves that number 2 spot. I mean, very little separates that number 1 and that number 2, John. I think Bob Baffert's hand, I talked about it. Not only is he the best Triple Crown trainer we have going right now, but he has such a strong hand this year. So I think the fact that Justify from that 6th spot, again, he's kind of like Magnum Moon. He's a latecomer. Actually, he's going to have less experience than Magnum Moon by the time he gets in the Kentucky Derby. I think that helps Magnum Moon's cause out a little bit. I think at least he's going to have significant experiences coming into a race like the Kentucky Derby. It's not going to overwhelm him.
Yeah.
Justify just might be the best talent of this crop. I mean, freakish talent here. I'm willing to move him inside that top 5 now. I think he's a top 5 contender. And I think you'll probably see him next in the Santa Anita Derby. Good Magic just comes down a little bit for me. Again, these horses are doing so well. That comeback was just disappointing enough that, I still think he's a top 3 contender. He's a Curlin. Speaking of Curlin, 1.25 mile form, Solimini. I didn't think he ran the greatest off the bench in the Rebel. He had an inside trip. He was able to punch through, and he's a grinder, John. He just doesn't have much of a move. He was on his wrong lead in here. A little questionable about if he's in his best form or not. But again, that was 1 1/16. I think second off the bench, grinder, 1 1/8, 1 1/4 even is going to hit him right between the eyes. I think that's what he wants to do. So these Sons of Curlin, again, they're classically bred. And I do think that there's a lot of upside with both Good Magic and Solimini, and that's why they're both in the top 5 for me heading towards the Derby picture. And that puts Magnum Moon really right outside of it, John, and really no movement beyond that. I'm willing to keep the rest of my top 10 intact for now.
All right, well, let's talk about this weekend then, and let's go with the Sunland Derby first.
Yeah.
Joel, this purse is pretty high. I mean, it's $800,000. We see some horses in here like New York Central. But one that I'm interested about is Peace. This horse just ran I think, 2 weekends ago. They're wheeling him right back, going for $800,000. Tell me, what do you think about the Sunland Derby, and who do you think is going to win this race?
A race we covered last week didn't come to fruition was at Pasadena that stayed on the grass. I thought Axeman may come in and be an interesting 2-turn play in here. I thought they would run Axeman in the Sunland Derby. Bob Baffert obviously elects not to put him in the entry box for whatever reason there, John. So when you start looking at this field, I think it's a contentious and competitive group.
Yeah.
I think All Out Blitz, the fact that my boy Jack flattered him running 3rd in the sham. I think All Out Blitz, break him from the rail, you know they're going to send out of there. This horse has some speed. I think he's a very interesting horse on the front end. I'm kind of curious to see what the pace is like in this race. I mean, we always, how many times have we said, you know, on paper there's a lot of pace in these 3-year-old races, and then it just never materializes. I mean, go back and watch most of these prep races in recent years, John. I mean, the bottom line is they're usually moderate to slow paces, so tactical horses have a big advantage, and I think closers are at a distinct disadvantage in the way a lot of these races unfold. So All Out Blitz, forwardly placed. New York Central, I think, is a miler at heart. They're going to probably send him, John. 7 Trumpets is another fast horse. I think their tactics last time in the Southwest, I think they're going to get him involved early in this race. Even Prince Lucky, I think, for Todd Pletcher, you know, had that one-turn form last year, too. First time Todd Pletcher, they like him well enough for Johnny V to come in and ride him in here on a Sunday program. So I think there's some interesting speed in here. I think, personally, All Out Blitz is the best of that speed. But if it were to collapse, or if there were to be some middle distance horses or sprinters exposed here, then I do think the interesting horses in terms of the closers would be, you know, Jerry Hollendorfer's horse Choo Choo Trying the Dirt, and maybe Hollywood Star, a horse that I started on the TCI Top 10 because I liked his upside. Yeah. To date, he's only proved to be a plotter. He's frankly proved to be a horse that, you know, is just going to pick up a couple pieces at the end but not really have an impact. However, he's really never had a pace to run at. In my opinion, you know, particularly in his last 2 when he's trying to come from way out of it. So Hollywood Star coming in off a bullet work, if he can get enough speed in front of him, typically Sunland's not the track you want to fall way out of and make a run. He's going to need the speed to collapse in here. I'm interested to see how he runs. I think a 1.8 miles is going to be what he wants. But realistically, if I were picking a winner in here, I'd probably go with All Out Blitz just because, again, that California graded form and the fact that, you know, speed is usually a great weapon here. I don't think New York Central wants to go quite that far. I think All Out Blitz is a little better for this distance. You mentioned a horse, Peace, who's going to try to take a drop in class here and close. Not a big fan of him so far. I'm not sure what he wants to do. I'm not sure a 1.8 miles is what he wants to be either. Peace may be more of a middle distance horse. So it's an interesting group, and I think there's a good mix of speed and closers in here, and there's really no talent. There's no standout in this race. I'm leaning All Out Blitz in here with a forwardly placed trip.
All right, let's talk about the Louisiana Derby now. This is a grade 2, but Joel, we all know it's worth $1 million. Bravazo was a horse that won the Risen Star last time, just by a nose, though, over Snappy Sinclair. Tell me, what do you think in this race? Who do you think gets it done?
Well, I'm not real impressed with this Louisiana Derby. I mean, this is a race that's, you know, very close to me. One of my favorite races of the year. And they're giving away $1 million, Sean, but it's still a grade 2 race. And I just don't think this is a stellar field. You have 2 graded stakes winners in the field. Obviously, that's the prep winner, Bravazo, like you mentioned, winning the Risen Star. I think he's formidable because you look at that pedigree and you say, well, 1.8 miles, you know, that ought to be better than even 1.16 miles for this Son of Awesome again. So the form he's in, 3rd off the layoff, good work pattern coming in. I think they're going to have to push out of the gate, being that he drew the 1. That's interesting. And I think what's really interesting is Noble Indy, WinStar is on fire right now. John Velasquez comes in to ride for Todd Pletcher. I still have thought this horse is more of a middle distance type horse. I think maybe he's more of a miler, and we've talked about that a little bit, but he's getting blinkers on here, and the pace scenario in the LeCompte and the Risen Star have been very slow. So he's drawing the inside here with blinkers on, can make him a little more keen and sharp early. He's not a great gate horse, and that got him in some trouble in the Risen Star Stakes because he's not that great out of the gate. If he can break sharper and get into the race, I think Johnny V is a good chance is going to put him on the lead here through what could be some very moderate fractions here and allow him to kick on maybe a little more from than he would ideally want to go, particularly from a group that is not a stellar group in here. So I think Noble Indy with blinkers on is interesting on the lead. I think Bravazo is going to try to come around and stalk him. I think those are the 2 horses, John. My Boy Jack's the morning line favorite off that win, but you wonder if that was a product of the racetrack last time out in the Southwest when he really broke through in that race. He's the closer, and I'll give you another closer. If by some chance pace does materialize in here, give me a minute. The horse it's a local Louisiana bred that had that grade 1 form last year as a 2-year-old. He is bred to excel at 1.8 miles. Dallas Stewart, the patient training style. I mean, Javier gets back on. He needs the pace to set up his kick. But I'm just telling you, if there's enough speed in here, he's 20 to 1 on the morning line. I'm a little interested in him maybe returning to his prior form down that long stretch if there's some speed in the race. But on paper, I think Noble Indy's going to be tough to catch with those blinkers.
That'd be huge to have a star guitar winning a Derby prep.
The horse has some quality. He's got some quality, I'm telling you that. And, you know, they've tried blinkers on and off with him. He's actually had blinkers on his last 2. He had some problems in his last start in the Risen Star. Obviously, got no pace to run that there. So I'm interested to see how he runs. I think he'll outrun his 21 odds.
All right. Thank you, Joel.
Yep.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap the Louisiana Derby and the Sunland Derby.